Hello everyone, welcome back. I just went through Lignitzer's 6 sword and buckler plays, and I did it using a Type X sword and a full-size shield. And this is the second time I've been around. I've done a series on his 6 plays, and I wanted to share with you guys some opinions and some conclusions that I have come to. And the main conclusion that I have come to is that when we look at Lignitzer's sword and buckler plays, what we're really seeing is sword and shield that's been adopted to sword and buckler. Okay, so what makes me say that? Well, if we look at other manuscripts and even later period treatises on sword and buckler, we see a different fighting style. I get a different sense. For example, if we look at the rapier and buckler, okay, with rapier and buckler, what we see is that the buckler stays out here, and we're seeing very subtle movements around the buckler with occasional cuts from the wrist or the elbow. Okay, but we're seeing basically we're seeing that everything is staying tight, and we're not seeing like huge cuts from one side to the other. A lot of like with Lignitzer, we get we start with a middle how, then we go left side Zurchow, right side Zurchow, shadow how high, a shadow high up high, then a low thrust to the groin. So we're seeing that he's attacking a lot of different areas. He's basically attacking all 4 quadrants. Okay, so he's really trying to get that defense, his opponent's defense, to move around. Let me put the rapier down for a second, and let's talk about I-33 or 133, and also some of the Talhoffers. The images that we see from Talhoffer. As we try to piece this together, what we're seeing is that they're striking. The sword is basically staying really close to the buckler, and basically it's almost like you don't have a buckler. Like you can take the buckler away, and you can do a lot of those strikes basically using the forte or the strong of the sword for defense and attacking with the tip. Having the buckler basically gives you a lot, a bit more defense. But the cuts themselves are very, they basically stay in this general area here. Even when you're striking down as such. You're not. I'm not seeing the variety of strikes, and especially the combinations, because Lignitzer, he'll say like start off with a middle how, then go left Zurchow, then right Zurchow, then shadow how up high. Then finish off with a thrust down low to the groin. So he's moving. He's basically attacking all 4 quadrants. Okay, and he's getting his opponent to really move around his defense. That makes a lot more sense if you're fighting shield on shield, because basically if we're fighting with the bucklers, if you're attacking, if you're with a buckler, basically, because my defense is so small, a low attack and a high attack are really not that far apart. Okay, whereas with the large shield, the high attack and the low attack are really spread out a lot more. Okay? So when I look at, let's say, 133 and Talhofer, I get a different sense, a different fighting style. Okay, I get the sense that those guys are actually fighting with sword and buckler, and they're using techniques that are basically have been evolved over a longer period of time to be used with a sword and buckler. And in a way, they're very similar to the Lignitzer longsword techniques, except that you got that basically you have the buckler, but because your hands stay together, for all effective purposes, when you're doing this, I mean, you may as well have a two-handed sword, because they're basically locked together. It's almost like one weapon. Okay, so with Lignitzer, I get more of the sense because he's striking Unterhaus, he's striking those high Scheitelhaus. He's moving the sword around a lot more. So that is the reason when I say that when I look at Lignitzer, right, and I look at his plays. Now, granted, I know that they are for buckler, but I get the feeling that those are sword and shield plays that basically, or sword and shield techniques that he modified, okay, to make work, with a sword and buckler. And like, for example, play number 6, where he has where basically you're pulling the buckler out of somebody's hand. I think that's a perfect idea of, example of a modification. He's obviously modified it to work specifically with a buckler. Let me put the buckler down for a second. But certainly when you try to use his techniques with a full-size shield and a Type X sword, okay, we see that his techniques work really good with these weapons, a lot better than like when I try to do some of the 133 stuff or the Talhofer stuff. There's not enough cuts. Both 133 and Talhofer, they don't show me enough cuts to be effective with a full-size shield. If I'm fighting against a full-size shield, I need to make a lot of cuts from different directions, in order to try and get the defense to open up a little bit, because basically there's just so much defense there. So that's the reason why I say that, when I look at Lignitzer, I basically see that and say, hey, listen, we have a very good source for sword and shield fighting. Okay, in fact, I think it works even better with sword and shield than it actually works with the sword and buckler that he's talking about. Now, how do I know this? Well, I know it because I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been fighting with a sword and a shield. Like I started HEMA and SCA at about the same time. However, when I was in the SCA, initially I just did sword and shield, and in HEMA I just did longsword. So it wasn't until much later on that I basically started looking at some of the HEMA sword and buckler. And when I came to, when I looked at 133, I said, okay, listen, that's nothing like what I'm doing in the SCA. I really can't draw any, that's completely different than what I'm doing with the sword and shield in the SCA. But however, when I look at Lignitzer, I can say, hey, you know what? Everything that's in Lignitzer is exactly what I'm doing in the SCA. There's some differences in the sense that, like granted, in the SCA, the hand is not a target area, so a lot of times when I'll strike, I'll bring the hand out a little further out. However, that's really not that hard to modify, to keep, especially with a Type X sword. It's really easy to just push the sword a little bit further out, and a longer Type X sword like this, basically, if you're in this position here and you're trying to get the tip to hit there, right? That's the ideal spot that you want to hit with. You almost need to keep your hand a little further back in order to get the right part of the sword to hit. Okay, so using a Type X sword and a large shield, basically, it really facilitates keeping your hand behind, further behind the shield. So it's not hard for me to modify the stuff that I've been doing in the SCA to make it work with the Lignitzer techniques, when all I need to do is basically just keep my shield a little bit more forward and manage my distance, so basically the bottom of my leg can't be hit. I think it works very well. So that's my conclusion. I have no proof of it other than to say that the stuff that Lignitzer shows in his especially in his first 5 plays, works really well with a full-size shield and a Type X sword, and I think it probably works better with the full-size shield and the Type X sword than it does with the buckler. The stuff that if I'm going to be using, if I'm going to be using a lighter sword like this and a buckler, it makes more sense for me to do more of the stuff that I see in 133, where I'm basically fighting around that buckler and keeping it tight and making those small cuts. That makes a lot more sense to me. So I definitely see a difference in the fighting style in 133 and Lignitzer. So those are my thoughts on that. If you guys have any of your own opinions, please post them. I'd love to hear from you guys. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a member, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.